How to set boundaries at workplace without losing your job. Your boss yells at you in a meeting in front of everybody, a colleague ends up taking credit for your work, and a client makes an inappropriate remark, a racial remark like, of course, you're Indian, that's what I expected from you. Now, these behaviors are wrong, no doubt. They're highly uncomfortable, but they also reveal something very important, which is that you, if you allow that behavior, you perhaps do not know how to set boundaries or how to stand up for yourself at workplace. Now, if I say to you, you need to stand up for yourself, you're probably thinking, tell your boss off, tell your colleague off, or tell your client off. If you did that, you may lose your job. You may be excluded from teamwork, or you may lose an important contract for which you'll be held responsible. So there is a tact, there is a strategy. You must stop these behaviors because a psychologist by the name of B.F. Skinner once gave us this wonderful quote which said, behavior is shaped and maintained by its consequences. What that simply means is if you allow something, it'll keep happening. So that yelling by the boss, the taking credit away from you at workplace, or the client saying something really bad or mean will continue if you don't stop. So you have to stop these, but tactfully. How do we do that? Welcome to the channel, everybody. My name is Anjali. I am the founder of a multinational story practice based in Singapore called Narrative, the Business of Stories. I'm also the author of a bestseller, Strategic Storytelling. We work with clients such as Google, LinkedIn, Microsoft, Shell, Dell, and many more. My purpose here is super simple: to help you be successful at workplace by telling your story. Let's come back to the topic at hand: standing up for yourself without losing your job. Now I want to introduce to a word called boundary. Boundaries are that tool that help you stand up for yourself without losing your job. So this video I have broken into two big parts. Part one, what is a boundary? Let's understand that. Part two, some practical workplace examples and how do you set boundaries in those situations. All the examples and the stories I'll share here are mostly my personal experiences because I have worked in the workplace for the last 25 years in many different countries, in many different positions. Now, let's start off with what is a boundary. Now, when you think of the word boundary, often the thought that comes to your mind is perhaps, this is my house and this is my boundary wall, right? The boundary wall is the wall that protects your house from animals just walking in or anybody who's loitering around just walking in. It protects your house. Similarly, boundaries at workplace protect your mental, emotional health. It is like this invisible, the one that you can't see kind of wall that exists and makes sure that no one speaks to you like that. Now, another way the word boundary can be explained as the things you will or will not do. They're your behaviors and it does not require anybody else to do anything, right? So what you will and will not put up with, what you will or will not do, and you're not asking anybody else to change anything here. But when you set boundaries, people's behaviors change and you learn how to stand up for yourself. So that's simply what the word boundary, setting a boundary actually at a workplace means. Now I want to give you some practical situations and examples. Let's go to example number one. You're in a meeting place and your boss just screams at you, throws the paper and says, "I told you to get this done. Why is it still not done?" It's not a good behavior. You want to punch your boss, I want to too, but you can't do that. How do you handle that situation? Well, I was in a meeting like that where not I was being yelled at, but a colleague of mine was being yelled at. And that colleague of mine that day taught me a very, very sensible, calm, and a practical way to set a boundary. My boss yelled at a colleague of mine, and he got up in a very calm manner, said, "You're very upset right now, and I can see and understand why you're upset. I will let you calm down, and I'll come back into this meeting when you have had a chance to calm down so that we can resolve the challenge that we have at hand and get the work done that we need to know." And he just walked out. The boss looked even more visibly stressed this time. But you know what was killing my boss this time? What was killing my boss this time was the fact that the my team member, had a lot more emotional maturity than the boss had. It was like he was looking at the mirror and not liking what he was seeing. So it's okay to say to someone, I can understand you're very upset and I can understand. Maybe I'll return when you have had time to calm down. I'll give you some space and then we can really look at how we resolve this matter at hand. Okay? So nobody can shout at you for doing that. You can just say something like that. Now, let's take the second example. Set boundaries for yourself. Okay? What do I mean by that? So say, for example, this is another situation that I was recently in. So there's a client and we are a few service providers. Like I provide organizational storytelling service. Somebody else provides handling operations at workplace and somebody else something. So all these people who provide service caught up for a coffee after the day of work had ended. We were doing it with different teams and we were having a coffee and they all started to discuss who gets paid how much. Now, it is a situation I am not comfortable in. I have learned long ago in my life that remuneration packages, what you get paid, is confidential. And through experience, I also know that these people will, what is the intention of this conversation? What are they going to get out of it? This kind of a boundary situation happens often with colleagues. Now, in this situation, what were they going to do with that information? Were they going to go back to client and actually say, that person you pay that much, so pay me more too? Well, you can't do that because how do you know? And if you say you know, you've actually broken what is written in the contract, that the terms and conditions of the contract are private and confidential. So I couldn't tell them that our contract states that we should not be sharing this because that wouldn't have been right. So I set a boundary for myself. I said to them, I feel highly uncomfortable being in this situation. I'm going to take a walk whilst you all discuss this. It is for me not to be a part of that. So it's very similar to the previous example, but a different way to actually talk about it. It's often when you find your colleagues gossiping about someone, because please bear in mind, if you participate in that gossip, it comes back to you. So if you do not want to be in that gossip, you do not want to be in that negative, bitching, toxic kind of a situation, you set a boundary for yourself and you say, I'm highly uncomfortable being in this situation. I will come back after you're done. So you exit. Now, let's talk about another situation. Set boundaries before a problem starts. So this goes back to Australia. The year was 2007 when I had delivered my baby. Now, at that time, what happened was, just like everybody else, I had a normal working day, like 9 to 5, but it's rarely 5. By the time you leave, it's 6. And my daughter was very young and it was really hard for me to reach home at 7 p.m. and see that it was almost time for her to sleep. I was like, I'm not getting enough time, I don't really like this. So when I returned back from maternity leave, right in the very first week when I felt that I wasn't feeling very comfortable about this, I actually told my boss that I'd like to work from 7 to 3. And if you are okay with it, I'd like to do that. But if you're not okay, I totally understand. I would want to look for alternative options for myself. Now, because I was established as a valuable employee to the organization, my company approved that. Now, the beautiful thing about setting a boundary right at the start was that I made sure that my boss had actually sent an email to everybody. And when I got up at 3 o'clock, nobody actually asked, why is she leaving early? So I had set a boundary for myself that I'm going to go home and I'm going to be with my child. Nobody disturbed me. Nobody actually, questioned me unnecessarily, except for if there was something really, really urgent, which was absolutely fine. Now, this form of boundary is a very practical form. If you are somebody who works from 9 to 4, or your job is to work part-time, or you have Saturdays and Sundays off, you can, under your email, write, I work from this time to this time. Saturdays and Sundays are my 2 days off per week. And I will not be responding to the emails. I will not be checking my emails those week. It's really important to set that boundary and stick to it. So not like I will write that Saturday, Sundays are my 2 days off and I will not respond. And then on Saturday, Sunday, I start responding. You are only breaking your boundary. Then nobody else will respect that too. During September 11, I think the head of aviation that day, I could be wrong with the title, he tells this wonderful story that when the decision had to be made as to what to do, September 11 had taken place, Twin Tower was down, somebody had to make a decision as to what to do with all these planes which are in the sky. And he said that on his first day of his interview, when he was giving the interview, he had asked a question to the people, senior people in the organization: if there was ever a crisis, would I be in a capacity to make the decision? That was actually during his interview, and they had said yes. And he said on his very first day at work, the 9/11 happens. And he remembered that he'd set that in place, that I would be the one making decisions. So he made a decision, and he said, irrespective of wherever these planes are, all come back to base. All come back to base. Now, that is setting systems and boundaries in place right at the beginning. After 2007, I have never done a job in which I have worked 9 to 5. I've always demanded right at the beginning that I have flexibility and autonomy. The job will get done. Although I must say to you that you can only set this kind of a boundary when you have achieved a certain credibility in the workplace and you are doing your job well, and people are willing to, work around you so that because you're a valuable employee. The last example, the fourth, probably my favorite one. When someone says something really nasty to you, right? In this book, Fearless Organization by Amy Edmondson, there is a story about the toxic work culture at Uber. Yes, the car transportation company, Uber. So they give an example of the toxic kind of culture that was developing in that company. And there's this girl who goes and tells the colleague that, will you help me do this? And the colleague turns around and says, of course, if you would sleep with me. Now he says, haha, just joking. Like a lot of people say those kinds of weird things and then end them by saying, haha, just joking. And she says that one of the things they changed at Google was to actually correct that language. Okay? So what they taught was, if a girl says something like that and she does not want someone to respond in that particular way, she shouldn't also just laugh when people say, haha, just joking. But you have to say, oh, that seemed a little unprofessional. Let's do a take 2. Let me try and say it again, and you respond appropriately this time. So the take 2 would be that this girl would say, okay, would you please do this for me? And this time, the colleague has to say it correctly. Yes, of course, or I'm sorry, my schedule is full, but I do not want things like, yes, of course, if you sleep with me, ha, ha, ha. So you have to, that is setting a boundary. What you will and will not accept in terms of behaviors from people. Okay, now these are some practical ways, and I think my final thought here is that setting boundaries is not about being rude. It is not about confrontation. It is all about self-respect. And remember, what you allow becomes the standard. Therefore, standing up for yourself at workplace requires for you to know how to set boundaries. If you liked what I shared, please hit the subscribe button, give me a like, give me a comment so that I can keep making videos like this for you. Stay storied, and I'll see you for the next video.